there was a lot that went on during the Great Depression, and there's a lot that we can learn from people that went through it. And there's just generally a lot of lessons that can be learned and applied to how we prep for today and for the future. So let's talk about building our preps as if we're preparing for the Great Depression. Be sure to click the link down below to where you can download a list of everything you need to create your own Great Depression pantry. So let's go ahead and get on to the video. Hey everyone, Morgan here. So the first thing I want to talk about is focusing on basics. So we want to build a food pantry in which we're focusing on basic things like flour and honey and sugar and salt and spices and other basic ingredients so we can make things at home. And I don't necessarily want to say you need to skip the box stuff, because sometimes having a box stuff, box food item is pretty convenient, right? And in this day and age, we can have that stuff. So like if you want to get a box of pancake mix and like a box of macaroni and cheese, you can stockpile that stuff and that's totally fine. But I also want you to understand how to make this stuff from scratch. How do you make pancakes from scratch? Super easy, right? You should be having the baking soda and the baking powder and the and the flour and the sugar and all these things on hand so that you can make pancakes from scratch. And the same with macaroni and cheese. Very easy to make it from scratch. I freeze dry my own cheese mixes so that all I need is to cook the pasta and then put that cheese mix in and boom, I have mac and cheese, right? You can also, have the freeze dried powdered milk as well as the butter powder, like in the can, and the pasta and then some freeze-dried cheese. There you go. You've made, you could also do powdered freeze-dried cheese as well. But boom, there you go, you have mac and cheese. So get creative and think about the ways that not only you can make these things on an everyday basis, but on a more long-term basis, like if the lights were to go out and that kind of thing. So I like to think about both ways. Next one's going to be gardening as much as you can. So during the Great Depression, a lot of people had gardens, a lot of people had chickens, a lot of people, you kind of had to. You had to do this stuff. And it kind of doesn't matter where you live. Even if you're in an apartment, grow indoors with some grow lights. You can grow out in your patio. And if you don't have a huge space, if you live in an urban or suburban house or something like that, you can still grow a substantial amount of food in just a small space. And we're not even talking about having to grow so much that you have enough for the year, which that's ideal, but just enough in which you can kind of just eat it when you can and then preserve as much as you can after that. So meat is actually getting really expensive, and I just hate it because meat from the store is getting very expensive, and it's really, really hard to eat meat. I try to buy a lot of canned meats, which are a little less expensive. I do actually buy a lot of frozen meats, which can help reduce price a little bit. I do a lot of Costco meats. They tend to be a little bit cheaper. I also look to local farms. Looking to your local farms for like the quarter and half cow and stuff like that, that's something that we should all be looking at. Trying to supplement if you can. If you live in a good area for like fishing and stuff like that, you can supplement like that. But meat is getting expensive just now, and during the Great Depression, it was very expensive. So, you may have to find other sources of protein so that you're not, you may not be able to eat meat every single day. Maybe you eat meat, twice, 2 or 3 times a week or something like that. Or just, once or twice a week. It really depends. But, there's other sources of protein, and I have a whole video on that in which you can get your protein sources. But beans are also a powerhouse. There's all kinds of ways to eat beans. I give beans a really hard time because people are just like, just stock up on rice and beans. But beans are a powerhouse, okay? I've never denied that. And I've always said you should stock up on beans. Just learn to cook with them and learn to eat them and learn how to incorporate them into your life if you don't already. So like I said before about stocking up on flour and wheat berries are an essential. If you are gluten-free, then there are other flour options that you have available to you. But like we stock ground flour for short-term purposes, for everyday and short-term. And then we stock up on wheat berries for long-term purposes. And we learn how to grind the wheat berries and make them into, the the bread and the pastas and whatever else we need to use the wheat berries for. But yeah, you can, buying in bulk is still one of the best ways to go now. Okay. So with flour and wheat berries, especially, you want to buy those in bulk. And then you want to keep plenty of seasonings on hand. So buy a bunch of seasonings, but also learn to grow your own seasonings. You can grow and just dry seasonings and herbs in your garden. So when you have your garden, go ahead. You don't even need a garden right now in order to grow herbs. There's so many spices and herbs that you can grow at home, just like in your windowsill right now. Okay. And it's crazy. You can just dry them and then you can have them there, or just pick them right off the road, just pick them right there and eat them fresh. So the next one is learning home preservation methods. So you have that garden. Or let's say, you got that half a cow or whatever, and you don't have a freezer or don't want to put it in the freezer. You can, pressure can it. You can pressure can that meat and have that for later. You can make your jams. You can pickle. Canning is obviously a really good way to do it. I freeze dry stuff because I think that's important to me. Dehydrating food is also another option. When we were off grid, we did a solar dehydrator, which worked really well, but you can do, just an electrical dehydrator. If you live in a dry climate, you can air dry a lot of stuff, not everything, but a lot of stuff. Next one is going to be sugar. Like I did talk about sugar already, but you should be stockpiling sugar and salt. These are staples. People are so anti-sugar and salt these days. Our diet culture and our nutritional culture is the most toxic thing I've seen lately. But sugar and salt are not the devil. They are in high moderations, of course. And especially when it's super, super processed, like, the high fructose corn syrup and that kind of stuff, that's where it's going to get bad. The sugar and the salt is not necessarily bad for us. In fact, our bodies need sugar and salt in the appropriate amounts, right, in those moderations. But you should be stocking up on those supplies, absolutely. And then your fat sources. I've done a video about keeping fat, the types of fat sources that you should be keeping. If you can render lard down or get it from a local butcher, that's really the way to go. You can get the ghee or the ghee, however you say it, whatever, ghee. The clarified butter in the jars, you can get that. Of course, save any of the grease that, if you make bacon, save it and you can cook with it later, all that other stuff, right? So fat sources are good. Oils you can keep in the freezer. I keep olive and coconut oil in the freezer and they last like a long time. So other basics you can keep on hand is things like oatmeal, pasta, rice, of course, peanut butter, popcorn, canned fruits, vegetable oils, although I would say just like olive oil and coconut oils, those are really good. But any oils you want. I'm not here to judge you, whatever oils you want, okay? Do your avocado oil, do whatever. You can stick the oils in the freezer and they'll last way longer than they will just on the shelf. But, even on the shelf, they'll last a good year or two, okay? So you can also, but in addition to stockpiling pasta, you can also make pasta. Learn to make it. It's a simple recipe as just eggs and flour. That can be pasta. And I got a pasta maker. You can get a little pasta maker to make things easier for you. It's so easy. But, canned fruits, canned anything, canned all kinds of canned food. These days you want to can basically everything, but canned fruits and canned vegetables, canned meats, those things should be high on your list, especially if you're not producing a lot of that. You're not producing a lot of vegetables. You're not producing a lot of fruits. You can buy that stuff now as well as learn to preserve this stuff. When you do get meat, so I'm wrapping around to meat. When you do get meat, make sure you're using every single part of it, okay? Even if you're not going to eat a certain part of it, give it to your dogs or something, or, you make the, cook up the chicken carcass and make it into chicken broth, right? So use all of it, okay? Try not to waste any of it. So learn to cook from scratch. This is the last one I want to talk about. We're not talking about a blackout scenario. We're talking about being able to use everything from our Instant Pot, from our air fryer to, getting cast iron to, cooking outside and, barbecuing, whatever, just cook more from scratch. We need to learn that buying the ingredients and trying to cook these things ourselves, yes, is more time consuming. And yes, it will not look like store-bought. Don't even get that out of your mind. It will not look like store-bought at all. It will be delicious. It will be it will be more nutritious because you're making it with limited ingredients. Like if you look on the back of the ingredients of bread, there's so much stuff in that, in commercial bread that you buy from the store. It's like, I don't know, I could make it with 5 ingredients and you're making it with 20. It's wild because they put a lot of other preservatives and things in it that you really just don't need. And yes, like I said, it is more time consuming. But if you don't have the time to make bread by hand, maybe you get a bread maker, right? The bread maker can do it for you. You get an Instant Pot that will cook your rice, that will cook your soups, that will make your yogurt for you. You use resources that are at your disposal. Even my air fryer can dehydrate. I haven't tried it yet. I want to. But even my air fryer can apparently dehydrate. So I want to try that out one day. But anyway, my point is learn to cook from scratch more. This is so essential. And especially, with things just getting so expensive. Like I said, you absolutely, if you want to still buy the box stuff, that's fine. But also learn to cook it from scratch and make it from scratch. And then buy the ingredients that you need to know to make it from scratch. And all you need to learn to cook from scratch is get like 1 or 2 cookbooks, okay? Or right now, especially the internet, every time I don't know what to cook, I look in my fridge and I say, okay, I have some frozen shrimp. Well, what can I make with that? And I search dinners with frozen shrimp. And it comes up with a million different ideas, okay? We live in the age of information. So get online and start learning to cook from scratch with what you have available. And if you learn that you find out you don't have that stuff, great, you can go get it. It's okay. Learn to figure it out. The last thing I do want to say about building your pantry is that a lot of stuff you're not going to be able to produce, like you may not be able to produce yourself, like eggs, right? You can find local eggs. And like I was saying with the local, go to your local butcher, but also go to your local sources for dairy, go to your local sources for meat. Even in places like Alaska, where it seems crazy like you can't find any of that stuff, you can. It might be on the more pricier side, but you can find those local sources. And in some instances, you may be able to trade with them. Like if they're just like a local farm, that they're not a business, you may be able to trade some stuff for them. Maybe you preserved a bunch of jam. You're like, hey, I got this prickly pear jam. You want to trade this for, some eggs? You never know until you ask, okay? Get a part of the community. I've talked about this before, but be part of your community. Go on Facebook and look for some Facebook groups for local communities, for like local gardening groups, local farm groups. The other day, just on this local gardening group, somebody was giving away free firewood. Free, right? You just don't know what's going to happen in these local groups. So get to know all your local groups. And start trading, start figuring people out, start learning skills, and just start at it. To get you started with this Great Depression pantry, I have decided to make a blog post down below to list a whole bunch of stuff, and you can go ahead and print that list and say, hey, this is what I got, and this is what I should be prepping, and here's what I can get, etc., etc. So go ahead and download that list, link down below in the description. Thank you all so much for watching. Conquer tomorrow, preparing today. I'll talk to you later. Bye.